And then it just turns into this huge dog pile of people grabbing for my camera, punching me punching them.
Larry!
I'm a car culture and automotive photographer. I've taken 5 million photos in my lifetime. This is my most famous photo. When Ken came around this corner, he grazed our shins. I spent a night in Chinese jail. This entire mob chased after me and smashed my camera. I barely graduated elementary school, middle school, and high school. My goal to own Bayside Blue R34 GT-R.
And that is your R34 GT-R.
20-year-old me would not have guessed that I would be in this position.
The rally driver, Ken Block, who has died in a snowmobile accident.
Did you suffer when you heard about Ken's passing?
Oh, it's probably one of the worst days of my life. I talk about him a lot in this book. He was going to meet with us in 2 days. It was terrible. It was horrible. Nobody's going to replace him, you know?
Larry! Welcome to the back of my van studio that just about fitted in your shop. And that over there is your R34 GT-R.
It is.
That is insane. 20 years ago, could you have ever imagined that you'd be sat here looking at that car?
Can I just point out, I almost feel like this shop that I built is perfect for this scenario. I absolutely love it. Yeah. 20-year-old me and honestly 30-year-old me would not have guessed that I would be in this position to be able to own that car. I have a fun story that I like to talk about when it comes to this car. When I was graduating high school, when I was 17, I put like a senior quote, because everyone has to put like your aspirations or what you want to be, or I'm going to become a doctor, whatever. Mine was simply, my goal in life is to own a Bayside Blue R34 GT-R. And I wrote that and I was serious about it, right? Being somebody that grew up playing Gran Turismo, playing video games, being into cars and JDM cars, that was just such a halo car, right? It was the one for me that I'm like, I would love to own that one day. Or it was just so far. I couldn't even imagine me even being able to see one, let alone own one. But anyways, the school thought it was so vain that they didn't actually publish my senior quote. Like they took it off. Because in the quad where everybody's pictures are up and they have, their senior quote below their pictures, mine was just blank. Legitimately, I was thinking like, well, I guess, yeah, they just thought it was just too vain or it was derogatory in some way. And so I just always kept that in my mind, and I always thought maybe one day I'll be able to own this car.
But did you think that they were stupid for that at the time? Did you think that they were ridiculous for that? Or in another way, did you just question it?
It was one of those things where I just had a moment to think about the situation and then I just brushed it off. I didn't really think about it more and more until I was in this position to be able to finally afford this car.
And today, what we're going to talk about is how you've become to be in this position to be able to not only afford the car, but also build the life, because life is about time. Time is such a finite asset, and how we spend time is so much more valuable than how we spend money. And the amount of time that I see you spending doing what you love and doing your passion and following it is absolutely insane. But so many people, when they maybe look at your pages, everything is about the photo, it's about the picture, it's about the story. So a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, I know Larry, he's a great photographer. But when I come here and I see the team and I see the mechanics and I see the editing suite and I see the equipment and I see the love and the care and the passion and the attention, there's obviously so much more than that. So if I had to ask you in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
The simple answer is that I'm a car culture and automotive photographer, but of course that's evolved over the years. Now I'm in front of the camera and it's something that I never intended it to happen this way. Part of it is because I'm pretty introverted, to be honest with you. I'm very reserved. Growing up, it was really hard for me to make friends, make true connections, because I was very quiet. But as time went on, and as I'm really pushing so hard to become an automotive photographer, I realized I had to make authentic and real connections, and I had to build these relationships over time. One of the things I always like to talk about is the fact that the people that I started working with way back when, all the way almost 20 years or more than 20 years ago, are the same people that I'm working with today. And we've all progressed in the same timeline, in the same way, right? So I've progressed as a photographer, as a storyteller. I'm able to do so many of these grand stories and grand videos. And the people that I worked with, whether they were a mechanic or they were a producer or whomever, painter, anything to do with cars, or a driver, they progress too. And it's great because now I just feel like I'm part of this incredible community that is growing exponentially year after year. I'm just so happy to be able to do what I do for a living. That's simple.
I think most people that look at other people's journeys, especially when they're in front of the camera, I know you're also behind it a lot, especially in your whole journey, you've been behind the camera a lot. I actually heard a stat when you were talking about your book video that you take between 300,000 and 500,000 photos a year, which absolutely blew my mind, and we will get into that. But the person that's usually in front of the lens, people always picture as the extrovert. They picture them as the kid in class that was the outgoing one, that was being sent to detention, that was just, the guy, the person that was maybe the head of year. And in reality, the amount of people I sit with opposite, their story has developed over so many years. It's taken so long to chip away at that introverted exterior and get to the bit that's actually comfortable with being in front of camera. So when did the introvert start to become more extroverted in you?
It's interesting. I feel like I did a lot of things, I guess, in the opposite world. I never went to school for photography. I barely graduated elementary school, middle school, and high school. Just really eked by. It's funny because I got into this position. I started doing a lot of writing. I started doing a lot of storytelling. And I failed pretty much all of my English classes. So I was thinking to myself, man, if I actually paid attention in school, maybe it would have helped my career. But I think the thing that really I realized later on is I just didn't find anything that interesting about going to school and studying. But then when I found something that I was passionate about, that's when I really put all my heart and soul into it. And including being in front of camera, learning how to tell stories, learning how to craft the stories, making the connections, being personable, all of that is stuff that I just learned over time. And I would say, it's just been a very gradual, natural progression since I started. I started in 2004. And ever since then, it's just been like a little micro wins every single year. I'm achieving more or getting access to something or traveling to a new country. And that's just what it takes. It's not some one overnight success. Especially back then, there was no social media. There was a really long period of time when I was just emailing my photos to people. I had an email list and I was posting on forums. I would show my photos to as many people as possible. And that's just the only way, because there was no social media back then.
I think to understand anyone's story, and you're painting the picture of when you started so well, but you need to understand the why. Why is it that that's what they were passionate about? Why is it that that tree grew and the branches came off it? So for you, we're sat here surrounded by Japanese car culture, I'd say. You've got so many insane cars, but also Formula Drift and that crazy world of drifting and tyre smoke. So what was it in your earliest years that influenced the cars and the style that we have around us now?
I'm assuming it's probably the same thing that influenced you to do this. It's a love for driving and a love for cars. Am I right?
But did that come from any singularity? Was that a parent? Was that a brother? Was that an experience?
I feel like it's something that if you grew up in Southern California, so much car culture was born here. And so much of it is ingrained in this area. You have to have a car to move, to just have for transportation. Why not have something that's pretty cool? Why not have something that you can be proud of? And naturally, growing up here, it was just the cool thing to do with me and my friends. Back then, when we were just getting into cars, we would have $500 cars. And the only way to make them better or improve on them is if we worked on them ourselves, and we still pushed them to the limit, and drove them and enjoyed them. But it all really just came from a love for cars. And as time went on, I quickly realized that for me to be surrounded by this community and be in the car industry, I had to do something. I had to have some sort of special skill. And lucky for me, it was photography, and it worked out. Versus me wrenching on cars. I love wrenching so much, and I love driving. But it's not my specialty. It's not my skill. While I enjoy it, it's just not going to earn me a living, right? So that's why at one point in time, I told myself I would quit all high performance driving. I would quit tinkering on cars. I sold whatever I had, and I sold all the things that were related to cars and car culture. I even tried to sell my one really prized possession at the time, which was my 1970 240Z that's parked out in front in my garage. And nobody would buy it at the time, and I was selling it for very cheap. I just told myself, look, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. I'm going to use all the money for camera equipment. I'm going to use it to travel the world to improve my photography. And luckily that worked out. And now we're on the other side of this. I am doing everything I can to drive and race and drift and get behind the wheel as much as possible.
I want to use that moment there, that moment of singularity to home in on, because to me, I grew up with car culture. I grew up in my local town with a group of friends that all naturally had the same interests. We all naturally went to car meets, we went to events, we went to anything that was on together. And I think any group of friends that love cars, there's always the person that's going to be the best mechanic, the best at tinkering, the best at working with them. You've always got the photographer of the group. Then you've always got the semi-photographer at the group that really just does it for a hobby as a way to keep their ADHD active at shows, going around clicking. And the group is made up of all of these people. For you to pick up a camera and start shooting, did you ever see an image, or was there something that captured you that sticks in your mind to actually take that step and become that person?
I think it wasn't so much about me looking at the pictures and saying that I'm proud of these pictures. That came later on. I think what's really special about photography is when you show someone else their picture. When you show someone else their car that they poured their heart and soul into, and you took a picture of it and you printed it out, or it's on your laptop, or when you're showing them this the way you see it, it triggers something. It's so interesting. It's like something in human nature, maybe. Something that you recognize that is yours, but somebody else made something from it. I don't know what it is. I think it's something that I've thought about a lot. But one of the moments, or one of the things that I talk about all the time, is the fact that I'm at the best races and the best events in the world, right? We were just in Monterey for Car Week. This year I was at Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is one of my favorite events. I photograph Pikes Peak every single year, Formula Drift. So many incredible events.
And your car was actually in the Quail, which
yes,
you get onto as well, which is insane.
Crazy.
And you've also
insane
just released, or
yes,
pre-releasing this.
Yes,
which we're going to get onto as
yes. So what I'm getting to is I'm there. I'm live. I'm seeing the cars. I'm taking pictures of the cars live, in person. But so is everyone else. Everyone else is there, enjoying these cars live. They can touch it. They can feel it. They can smell it. They can hear it run. But the funny thing is, time and time again, and this happens almost every single day I'm shooting, somebody comes up to me and they say, I can't wait to see your pictures. But I always think to myself, just stop right there. The car is right in front of you. Just look at it. Just don't wait for my pictures. Enjoy it. But again, that's human nature. Maybe they want to see it through my lens and what I saw. With that said, I appreciate that, but I think it's hilarious. Does that...
You're going to have something so good in front of you and it's right there in reality, but we want to see the non-reality.
Yeah.
But even though it kind of is reality, but maybe it's because humans always strive to see the best version of something. And there is something about some pictures that are taken that when you see them, you can be looking at the exact same thing, but in a photo, it just looks 10 times better, albeit the editing, the lighting, the way it's done. And I think that we also, as humans, always tend to appreciate, especially people that are in an entrepreneurial, maybe have got their own business position. We always love to hire or look for people that are better than us at doing any given task and tend to appreciate that.
Yeah. And obviously I appreciate it the same way, but in a different way. So for example, just this last week, I had a chance to drive my R34 at Laguna Seca, going down the corkscrew. So cool.
A track that was on every game growing up as well.
Yes. I love driving that track so much, and I was pretty familiar with the track, so I felt comfortable to push that car, even though it was my first time on that track with that car.
Dialed in.
So then I thought to myself, I really hope somebody gets a picture of this going down the corkscrew. And it did happen, but that's another example, right? I have the car. This is my car. I get to drive it anytime. But what I treasure is a picture of it going down the corkscrew with me driving it. And I think that's something that I'm able to tap into for everything, with car culture. People are just so excited. There's this passion for this thing that is not alive. It's just plastic and metal and, this machine that we've given a soul.
What I want to get into, though, is to have moments like that in your story, and what you do is capture stories. But to have moments like that in your story when you can enjoy a car like that, which was your dream, which was the thing that the literal teachers ripped off of that poster, you had to turn your passion into something that actually paid and paid well. And I think it's a fair comment to say that humans as a whole probably wouldn't look at photography as the most lucrative career in the world. When you picture brain surgeons or lawyers or business owners, I don't really think that comes into it. So to take that to this level, I really want to get into understand the how, because I had so many friends that the reason I saw you for the first time, come across you for the first time, I'll never forget it, I was in my local pub and my friend had won the same car, the Datsun 2Z, on a giveaway competition in the UK. And another friend brought up his phone and said, I took some photos of that car, but this guy took some better, and brought up your photos. And that was all the way in the UK. Now, those lads I was sat with, you are living their dream. That is their dream, to do what you do. So what do you think is the moment? Because for me, when you talk about that moment where you were prepared to sell everything and ditch it for the lens, for the equipment, and for the travel and the experiences, to me, that seems like possibly one of the most impactful moments in your story.
Yeah, it was. I've made a lot of sacrifices to get to this point, but I feel like not everyone needs to, right? Your friends who enjoy photography and also enjoy cars, they can do it their way. That's the beauty of it. It's a scale. It's not all in like me or none at all. It's a sliding scale. They could do it on their off time. They could do it at events. They could do it as a hobby, or maybe they take a couple paid gigs. That's the beauty of it. Not everyone needs to go as crazy as I have into car photography, but I welcome people who want to, because there's a place for everybody. I mean, you probably saw it very evident at Car Week this year. There's more car spotters than there's ever been, period. It was insane.
Off the chart. And the place, literally, we described it, because it was our first year going there, me and my partner Edie. We described it as a literal video game. The place turns into a video game. You can't comprehend what is going on, and it desensitizes you for cars, because it becomes so ridiculous. There's like 6 F50s that go past you one way, and then a Jeska that goes past the other way, and it's just like, what the hell?
What gets me is the enthusiasm, right? What gets me are the people camped by on the side of the road, on the sidewalk, sometimes with chairs set up. And then you have the car spotters that are literally running with knife hands as fast as they can go just to get in front of the vehicle, just to get that shot. Who the heck knows where any of this material goes, by the way? Okay. I don't think there's that many content creators pumping out this much stuff. It's almost like a lot of these people just do it for themselves. And that's what makes me happy. You know, they're enjoying cars this way.
We actually parked the van when we had an off morning on one of the bends going out towards Big Sur, and we opened the doors just like this and just sat and watched all the cars coming down the road. And that, to be honest, just as a car fan, get rid of the podcast or anything monetized over the top of like loving the automotive one. That is just the purest form of enjoying cars that you can be, not even behind the wheel.
Yeah, and this also is a great example. You mentioned earning a living as a photographer. Honestly, if somebody were to look for money, or they're looking to earn a lot doing photography or video or being in this car industry, it may not be the right gig for this person, because that's not what it's about. Money may come eventually, especially if you're really good at what you do, if you're extraordinary, if you're very talented and you have something to add to the community. But it shouldn't be the driving factor. It shouldn't. Your love for cars, your love for making connections, your love for traveling and making friends and uncovering stories, that is what should drive you first, in my opinion.
Do you remember a first experience stronger than a first paid gig?
Stronger than a first?
Like, what comes to mind first? Your first paid gig, or like something that happened?
Honestly,
around that time.
I feel like I don't even remember really my first paid gig.
How did it start?
It just...
Can you shoot my car?
Yeah, something like that. Or can we pay you to use these pictures? It wasn't significant. That part wasn't significant.
Did you plan to turn it into a business earlier on than that moment?
At one point, I was taking baby steps, and I was thinking that it potentially could be possible. The reason why I knew it was possible is because it already existed. Like, I knew people that did it for a living, and I looked at them from behind the fence or from far away, and I thought to myself, like, I need to be doing what they're doing. I can do what they're doing. Like I feel like I had it in me. So then, yeah, I just pushed really hard in every single way possible to get to that point.
I'm going to let you into a little secret. Over 65% of you that watch these podcasts are unsubscribed to my channel, and it's completely free. I've literally built a replica van studio on the other side of the world, flew my carpenter out here and shipped all the materials across just to get to these incredible guests and record these episodes. So if just you could do me one favor for a second, that's get out your phone. It's get your TV remote out, click the up button and find that subscribe button. Just hitting that button will allow me, as I've done numerous times, to level up the guests that you see on this show and make this the biggest automotive podcast in the world. And hopefully you'll take something away from that. So if you see the value in tapping that subscribe button for free, please do it. Do you think without the launch of social media back in 2011, I think Instagram launched, and we're able to display photos far and wide? I know we had Facebook, etc. But did that also, I say, put you on a global stage, just make you so much more exposed to the world and different opportunities?
Yeah, I definitely think social media helped. I was a pretty late adopter to it. Part of it is because I'm not an Apple user. I use Android. And as you probably know, Android, they were a very late adopter to Instagram, right? In fact, I remember the day I signed up for Instagram. I was at the Spa 24-hour race in 2012. And it was just like that day that they launched it. And the moment they launched it, I signed up for it because I was jealous for a while, for that whole year that it was available on iOS. I was seeing my friends, posting and sharing like, oh, this is so cool. I was thinking to myself, oh man.
And you weren't tempted just to go and get the flipping £100 smash phone from the shop down the road?
No, part of it is because I'm a diehard PC guy. I've always been. I come from a gaming background. I loved playing games. I loved playing Gran Turismo and racing games and Need for Speed, all of that stuff. So I feel like I'm kind of stubborn in that way, but it's also helped a lot later on in my career because we are so lucky. It's so crazy that I've done a lot of work with Intel. I've done some work with Google. I've done a lot of work with MSI. They make incredible computers, and that's what we use. And a lot of people ask me, and some people even make fun of me. They're like, hey, we need to start a GoFundMe for Larry because he obviously can't afford an iPhone. But my response is like, hey, is Apple like calling you, reaching out to you to work with you, or what's going on here? Because I'm actually actively trying to work with these companies and help them improve their products. Sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No, you're all right.
Yeah.
In the early days, being that introverted character that you described, I can clearly see, though, you are uber competitive, especially comes out in racing. And I think that anyone that becomes successful has that competitive streak in them. But I never hear, ever, in the photography world, photographers saying, my pictures are better than his pictures. I do it better. Is there a degree that you do hold yourself to be like, because you remember when you upload a YouTube video?
Yeah.
And it like sometimes shows you like, will your thumbnail stand out compared to these 100 thumbnails?
Yeah.
Do you think about that in the shots that you're doing? Not necessarily for a thumbnail, like for a shot in general, to say, I'm capturing this moment on this corner of this track. And there's all these other guys stood here, but I'm making sure that the snap that I take is going to be unbelievable. Does that go through your mind?
No, I feel like I'm pretty well aware of where I stand in the photography world. I feel like I know where my skill level is and what is possible if I'm in the right place at the right time with the right camera and I happen to get the right settings. I understand where I am in the hierarchy of photographers and skill and knowledge and vision and all that. I think my true talent is putting in more effort to be in front of the good subject. So oftentimes I'm with photographers that are very inspiring. A lot of people ask me, hey, who inspires you? Which famous photographer inspires you? I always say that it's the people in the trenches with me at the events, shooting these cars, at Car Week, at Pikes Peak, at Formula Drift, at Goodwood Festival Speed. The people that I'm with, trackside, suffering together, almost like locked arms, just enough space for all of us.
They've got the passes. They've been through the process. They've grown ages to give them the opportunity to be there.
Those are the people that inspire me, because I'll tell you right now, so many times, very often, I'm right next to somebody and we publish our pictures, and after the fact, I look at their pictures and I think to myself, oh my God, how did I not see this? They just figured out some different angle or put a different spin on it or did something different. Even though I was at the same place, same time, same car, they were a better technical photographer. And that happens all the time, nonstop. But the advantage that I try to extract all the time is to have the access to a certain collection or a certain build or a certain scene or set something up or whatever. Go earlier, stay later, wait for the cars to roll out. I just put myself in a situation where I potentially could get a shot that this other photographer is not even at.
What is it that created that piece of your brain that thinks like that versus the guy next to you in the trench?
I think it's the motivation. It's the drive to be able to create something that's different, that's special, that's maybe extraordinary, that maybe is inspirational. I don't know what it is.
Jaw-dropping. I love the phrase for photography, jaw-dropping, because there's like a small amount of photographers that I'd love to have all of you on the podcast to say a story. And another one, I've asked him several times, he's actually said no, but he's still so inspiring to me, is Alex Penfold. Mm-hmm. And I love some of the shoots that he, especially some of the desert shots. And it always was, when it come up in my feed, picture, jaw-dropping.
He's a very good example of somebody that I look up to. These are the people that inspire me, because these folks are the ones that are pushing the limit of what's possible with car photography. And I'm not saying I'm not doing it too. I am. I'm trying my absolute best. I built a camera car just to be able to photograph and film at speed when these drift cars are pushing their hardest, right? I always thought to myself, well, they're there. What if I'm there too? And it sounds so simple and it sounds so dumb, but it's something that I've just been working on year after year and year after year to perfect. It's so much of that,
But to get on the tarmac with that car in front of the other car is down to people, connections, opportunity, and reputation.
That's the hard part.
Reputation is my favorite word, and it's become my favorite word of all these podcasts, because I used to do this thing for a while where I would give a guest 3 words that might mean something to them, and I'd ask them to pick the one that meant the most. And every single time, 5 episodes on the trot, the person picked reputation. So I stopped doing it because I knew that it becomes one of the most important parts of absolutely everybody's story. But reputation is only built over time, and it's built by people starting conversations. And that can also be difficult when you're a little bit introverted and a little bit off to the side. So how did you build that early reputation? Because there were so many people that you'd have watched in movies and that you'd looked up to, they've ended up being part of your story, that you've ended up capturing their moments. So where was a major point in your earliest years as a photographer where you really took a big step forward in building your reputation?
That's a really good question. I think if you see my storytelling and if you watch our content on YouTube and if you see my written articles, something that was really ingrained in me early on was to be very positive about the things that we're covering. There's terrible builds out there, right? We try to avoid those, right? It's not something that needs to be highlighted. What needs to be highlighted are the really top level builds, inspirational builds, and they don't have to be expensive. They could be the $500 car, but if there's a good story and if they put heart and soul into it, then it's something that's worth telling. It's too easy to be negative in this industry, right? Especially if you're highlighting car culture. That's honestly probably the easiest way to get views, is to be negative, to be controversial, to spark some fighting. That's a great way to get a lot of views, a lot of interaction, a lot of comments. But I feel like I've gotten this far by being positive.
By being the opposite.
Yes. I try my best. And, there are cars that I photograph that may not hit the mark. And I still try to focus on the positives.
So if you believe that, and you're Mr. Nice Guy, and as someone comes up to you and they can have the worst build in the world, but they're a lovely person. And I've struggled with this as a podcast host as well, because we often, if we're showing our pictures or videos or books to the world, we don't get to interact with our audience a lot. Like you're inside, you're shot behind your house, very encouraged. You're surrounded by the people you see every day, and then the people that you shoot with. You don't necessarily see the hundreds of thousands of people all the time that then support you, but you still have the same level of, you owe them the same because they're there supporting, watching, thinking. And my point is, what I struggle with is I get a lot of people that get, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word? Insulted. That's it. So I find that I have people that can potentially are not the right fit for the podcast, for me and for my audience. And I owe my audience the best possible examples of guests and what my audience would love to watch. And they can't understand why they wouldn't make the podcast. Do you find it hard that there's people that would love to see you post and write about and do all these things with their cars, but you don't think that they're necessarily the right fit for what you've built?
Yeah, I'll give everybody a chance. And sometimes people surprise me. But I know what I like, and I generally try my best to highlight what I like. But I'm also looking for new and interesting things, right? There's so much of our car culture that we have to look at closer, especially if somebody is in love with this thing that they love so much, they put their heart and soul into it. I should take a second look at it and I should highlight it. But if you want to talk about reputation, I'm really relying on my reputation for something that I'm going to do next week. Okay, so I'm going to try my absolute best to pursue the story that I've been trying to pursue for a long time. On Monday, what's today? Today is Thursday. On Monday, I'm flying to Brunei. So that face is showing it right now. You kind of see where I'm going. I'm putting my reputation forward to basically show the royal family that I'm not there to push any agenda or anything. I'm there for cars. So I'm not going to go through life regretting not trying. So I'm going to try. So by the time this comes out, you guys will see if I succeeded.
How the hell does that opportunity drop into your inbox?
It's been something that I've been taking baby steps over the past couple of years to eventually, hopefully, come to fruition. I don't know. We'll see. The point is that I'm going to put it out there, and then I'm going to show that I'm there, and I'm going to put my best foot forward and I'm going to be positive. But there's no way for me to know. I'm going into the unknown, and that's often the case when it comes to me traveling and pushing for these car culture stories, because a lot of times, and still happens today, I go to these places, the far reaches of the earth, wherever, because cars are everywhere. People always ask me, why are you even here? Why is this interesting to you? This is just a dingy old shop, and I just work on these old trucks, or I work on this thing, or I built this over time, and this is my car. Why are you here? And I look at them and I think to myself, you have no idea how cool you are, and how much of a trendsetter you are, and how much I want to tell your story, and how much I want to photograph you, and your hands, and the cuts that you have on your arms, and this blood, sweat, and tears that you put into this thing. So, with that said, I'm just going to try. And by the time you guys see this, who knows? You'll see.
Many of you might not know this, but away from the recordings that I do in my van studios, I've actually got a digital marketing agency. Now, we specialise in a lot of automotive clients, but we cover everything really. Our team is made up of PPC specialists, SEO specialists, and the most talented designers I've ever seen, which have done work like the Starnagloss website, the TWR website, and many more. We've actually just built Icon Box for the Auto Alex crew as well, meaning that people that watch their channel can buy their favourite merch seamlessly and in style. So if you're interested in starting a project and you'd love to speak to us, just tap the link below and let's hop on a call.
One of my favourite quotes I've ever heard is, "The magic is in the work that others aren't yet doing." And I think that right there almost sums up that quote to a T, because it's looking for the places, looking for the shops, looking for the detail that others aren't necessarily doing. If I come to this hardback copy of your book, which must be, when I hear stories like the opportunity of doing what you're going to be doing on Monday, it must actually be hard to know in these 400 or so pages when to stop and say enough's enough, it's time to publish, because your story is ongoing, it's nowhere near over. So is that quite a tough thing to do as well, to be like, well, this cool thing's going to happen and this cool thing's going to happen?
Yeah, so this book is something that I've been dreaming about. It's been something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I thought to myself that, hey, maybe at the 10-year mark, I'll do a book, or maybe at a 15-year mark. And then there was one point in time when I was getting very serious about making a book, when Ken Block was just doing his Gymkhana 10, pretty much like the final Gymkhana. I thought to myself, okay, once Gymkhana 10 is done, that means that it's such a big moment, and it's like a stamp, like a timestamp in car culture history. Like the great Ken Block is ending this series, and might as well end my book with this series. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't get it together, and I'm glad I couldn't, because I don't think it was the right time. Now I think is the right time, because I'm a big, I'm really big on round numbers. And while 20, 21 years, not so round, but I just figured, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it?
There's meaning in time. Can you pinpoint for me a time in this book, a place in this book? You just mentioned a name that anyone that's ever been near a steering wheel and actually cared about it would know, which is Ken Block. He burst onto my TV screen through Top Gear, sliding a black car around the streets of London at the time, a Hoonigan mobile. Do you have a point for you in this book that summarizes where that started, or something really, really impactful?
It's tough, right? Here, smell, without a doubt. Yeah, the smell of fresh print, but smell of fresh printed paper. Okay, so
that was genuine reaction. Genuine reaction.
This is my most famous photo.
And we're putting this on screen now.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, On Spotify, you can watch this in video form as well if you're listening to this through audio. And if you're listening to this through Apple, I genuinely ask that you go and listen to this now. Like view this now and the pictures that are on screen, because this is jaw-dropping.
So this is my most famous photo, and it was during the filming of Gymkhana at Pikes Peak with Ken, hanging 2 wheels off at probably the most famous corner. This is also known as Evo Corner, which is where that Evo 9 went off and started rolling down the hill. And it was like a big moment in Pikes Peak history. This is legitimately a death-defying moment, right? If he went off, it doesn't end. It just keeps going. And I was just very fortunate to be able to
show my other half that's in the van as well, and everybody through that lens with your car in the background as well, because it's capturing these moments in so much talent that leads to the ability of having moments with things like your cars behind us.
It's interesting because when I think about photography, when I think about car photography, especially working with somebody like Ken, he's really helped me put my images on the map. There's no other way for me to get my images in front of so many eyes. One of the tasks that I was always really pushing hard for every time I was on set with Ken, or anytime I'm on set with the Hoonigan guys or shooting Gymkhana, Travis Pastrana, anytime I have this really important task of being the photographer, my number one goal is to get that thumbnail shot. You know how important it is to get that thumbnail shot. That's what's going to make somebody click on 100 million, 200 million view video.
And if you're scrolling the wheel, the moment that you pick the camera up and you look at the screen, you start scrolling your wheel, I'm guessing hundreds of shots of that moment that must have been taken.
Yeah, so this one was special in that I did a huge panoramic pan of it. And I've told the story before, but the actual photo is only this big. And what the rest of it is a panoramic. So as I was watching or listening to the radio and predicting when Ken was going to come around the corner, I kept tiling this panoramic of 20 or so images. I think it's a little more than 20. But I kept tiling. But I chose not to Photoshop it or alter it in any way. I showed it the way it was. So you could see B-Cam is here. My buddy Brian Scotto, he was holding the camera for the second angle. The first angle was somebody that was just standing right in front of me. And the director, Brian Scotto, was standing behind me. And when Ken came around this corner, what a lot of people don't see or a lot of people don't realize is that he's drifting this way. To make this corner, he flicks it the other way. And I kid you not, he grazed our shins maybe 2 to 3 feet away from our shins to make this corner. That's something that you don't see. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that happened. But when he stopped, I ran over as fast as I could, like a car spotter at Monterey Car Week. And on the back of my camera, I had this shot.
I was going to ask, when did you get the chance to show that shot? And I was imagining after the paddock, maybe at drinks or something like that. I
showed him immediately. And that moment where I showed him and I was so excited, made it onto the Amazon show, which is the Gymkhana files. And it's actually in the intro because I'm so excited. I'm like, I can't believe I got this shot of you doing this death-defying thing.
Just there with the SD, keep the SD.
Exactly. It's crazy. And I think about this all the time. I think when you look into a crowd of people, or when you're, like you mentioned, if anybody has held a steering wheel as a car enthusiast, they know who he is and they've seen his videos. That means they've seen my photos. So it's countless. There's no way to know. There's no way to know because of him and because of all the incredible people that I've worked with, builders, drivers, everybody, even mechanics, just people that I've been surrounded with. Because of those people, my photos, I don't know. It's impossible to know. It's impossible to know how many people have seen my stuff.
We talk about those words that I mentioned that I ask people when they come on, and that reputation usually is the one that people would pick. But when you capture a moment like that and you're talking about such a inspiring individual, the word talent comes up again. You've used it so many times in this podcast. Like, is it that also inspires you to take pictures, just being able to witness the raw, unedited talent of someone that's able to do that?
Yeah. I really have to hand it to Ken. I have to hand it to these drivers even more so now, because now I'm on the other side of really clawing my way up the ladder, trying to make a living, trying to make a name for myself. I'm so lucky that I get to race, and I'm so lucky that I get to get behind the wheel, which in turn means that I get just a little inkling of how difficult it was for them. It was so easy a lot of times in my career for me to brush it off and say, what the hell? Why can't you just hit your mark? We get our pictures, we get the best video ever, and then we call it a day. It's so easy for people to do that right now when they're watching F1. Like, how could you not see that? You let the guy pass. It was so easy to see, or whatever. You know, how could you make that mistake? How could you spin out? Oh my goodness. I could not believe the skill that people like Ken, people like Travis, people like everybody that I photograph, Tanner Faust, you know, whomever, Reese Millen, Ken Gucci, Max Verstappen, all these people that I photograph, Sung Kang, whatever, all these people that I shot from the outside, they have their talent that they're just, that's what they do. That is what they do, and that's what they're good at, and it's my job to capture it. And I have so much more respect for these drivers. So much more. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to Road to Success.
We've spoken about a moment in the book that perfectly summarizes Ken and also your relationship with photography with Ken, and that you were able to share moments like that. Can you show me something in the book that is by chance? Because as you said, you've sometimes got to be in the right place at the right time to capture the right shot. And that's sometimes standing places outside of hours, staying a little bit later. Sometimes people set themselves up for the perfect shot and it eventually comes. But is there something in this book that also represents luck and that ability of being in the right place at the right time?
Ooh, there's a lot of that. There is a lot.
Well, I imagine with 300,000 to 500,000 photos a year, it probably is.
So while I'm looking through this book and I'm choosing something,
because it's hard to do that on the spot. Sometimes you need to get a picture to actually think, oh, that was that time.
I'll explain a little bit about this book and what it took to get to this point, right? So my estimate is that I've taken about 5 million photos in my lifetime. And it's actually a very conservative estimate, because I'm assuming that it's more, especially because I have two cameras, Canon 1DX Mark II. I have two of them that have over 1 million actuations on them each, like on the counter. So the 5 million estimate is honestly probably very conservative.
And those cameras were also part of your journey when you were really ramping forward your photography and what you were doing as well. Because I heard you say you actually got a video, because we talk about so many still moments and we're sat here with the book, but also your journey, your story has become about visual moments, about capturing video, about your YouTube channel, about the stories. I just can't. I'm sorry. I just completely gone off track by looking at some of these images, because I don't think what's beautiful about a conversation, sitting down on podcasts and turning our phones off, which none of us do a lot, is you sometimes look at something and you get so much more depth in your brain to analyze it and to think about something you don't normally think about.
Right.
If I could just take the audience just for a second on a random page, like every single one of these pictures represents a story. So like if I said that's picture, there's a story for you.
Yes.
And how many pictures are in this book?
So we tried our best to keep it to 2,500, but it ended up being closer to 2,700, more than 2,700. I think it's 2,800. I was very, very particular and very careful about choosing which images I want to make it into the book. They all, each and every single one meant something to me. And each and every single one was the best of a series. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, because when you flip through these pages and
so
you point at something, that could have been a week, that could have been a day, that could have been a whole project, but it just got distilled down to one image.
I think this is a car that I recognise.
That's Magnus.
It is Magnus. And Magnus has sat on that very seat opposite me, and I'm lucky enough to have been to his garage and seen the talent that he also has. So for how to make his cars look like that.
He wrote the afterword for this book. So that's Magnus right there.
And that photo purely sums up Magnus, because I think the word outlaw when it comes to Porsches is Magnus's. We can say he owns that. He's got trademark of it. If everyone wants to use that word, give Magnus £1. And I was lucky enough to have a 911, and it had Fuchs wheels, but they were done in black. And it was a 930 turbo G50. I loved that car. But it's amazing how an individual can be linked to a point of a photo that we see so much and many of.
But I adore him. I love him so much. He's such a great ambassador for the culture. And I've just been so lucky to be able to connect with him. And I told the story of how I connected with him in this book. So 405 pages, and honestly, a lot of writing. I'm a terrible writer. I'm just going to say it right now. But I tried my absolute best to do as much writing as possible, to do as much storytelling as possible, and a lot of stories that I haven't told yet. And it was all in airport lounges, on the flights, in cars, in transit, waiting for some event to start or whatever. That's all the free time I had for this year of me making this book. I sat down in front of my laptop and I just started banging out words. And Ryan from Carrara Media, who published this book for me, he inspired me with like starters, because he interviewed me and I told him like that's Carlos Ghosn from the release of the GT-R, and who would have known 15 years later, I would sunset the GT-R for Nissan. I would do the last pictures of the GT-R. Like there's so many crazy stories when I turn the pages and I look at these. Honestly, I get emotional because I think about how much sacrifice and how much time I put into all this stuff. But I tried my best to write as much as I can. And those who care to read and to learn about my story, they'll read it. And the cool thing about this book is it's backwards chronological. And I did it on purpose. So when somebody's flipping through the book, when they open the early pages, they see my best work. They see stuff from 2024, like December of 2024 is like kind of like the start of the book. And then it goes all the way to 2004. So it's backwards chronological. Yeah, you have like Sebastien Loeb here. You have, I don't know, just so many.
I've got to make sure I grab to these pages to the audience.
Right,
put them on the screen and there. So
maybe you should do the page number.
But
anyways, the point is that I wanted it to be something where you see my work, I guess the evolution of my work, right? Go from something that I think is my best work, which is my latest work, because I've now over 20 years made my connections. I've developed my skill. The technology is the best it's ever been. You know, the Canon cameras are absolutely incredible. The glass is so good now. And then you keep flipping and flipping, and then you see, okay, so now the style is different, right? Maybe at one point, I talk about this in the chapters, it wasn't so much about the beauty and the composition and the colors and the technical challenge. It was more about, this is this personality, and I had access to this person, and I want to tell the story about this car being stuck here, or it crashed here or flipped here. It was more, and then it evolves to like storytelling. It evolves to, here's what the story is. Not, this may not be a technically good photo, but it's something that's extraordinary that's happening, you know?
And on that, a moment for you of capturing a photo that is extraordinary might also be a moment of absolute sadness for someone else, or one of the worst moments in their life. And that's a really hard thing to balance. Do you have a photo that springs to mind in the book that could summarize that?
There is one. I'm so glad you mentioned something like that.
And I've got to take a picture of the page because I owe it. Yeah, everybody watching that I get every one of these pictures on screen. And I may have to swap the batteries over in the camera just in a minute.
No worries. First Instagram post, look at that, 128 likes. But it's funny, some of the likes, look, July 27th, 2012, 24 hours of spa. It was during media check-in. I was getting my tabard, and I saw this 12C parked in the parking lot. And this is the photo that I got with my Canon camera. And then this is the one that I got on my phone, because I don't know if you remember, back then, you couldn't use other pictures. You had to use the picture that you shot with Instagram, and then you post it. And I thought to myself,
I would have known that then, but obviously forgot that now.
Yes. And it was square only.
What about this photo? If this was one of the early days,
yeah.
What do you look at and love about it, and what do you look at and hate about it now?
I wouldn't have taken this photo from this angle because the wheels turn to the right, and it annoys me that there's a gap here. So if I were to take this again, I would have gone this way a little bit, and then it would have been cool because like the wheel is out a little bit and it gets rid of this gap. Couple other things. I feel like it's maybe a little underexposed. I also shot it wide open, which makes it a little soft on the edges. But that was the camera technology back then. You know, I had the best, but it was still lacking compared to what it is now. Yeah, just like a lot of little things that I look at. I'm like, I can't believe I did that.
AI is having such an influence in our world now because we're looking at a moment now, a snapshot, quite literally.
Yeah.
At a time where that wasn't a thing.
Right.
AI is in Photoshop. That background that you took all those images to make a panorama of, you can now ask Photoshop to expand.
Yeah.
AI is in the writing that it's done, is in the grammar that it's done, is in the ideas that it's done. It's becoming a weed. It's becoming like something so like electricity that's part of everything that we do. Is there any AI influence in this book whatsoever?
It's honestly my first line in this book that I wrote. Is no AI here. It's the real deal. That's not to say I don't use AI in my photography. I use it to fix my mistakes. And I also use it to correct technology. So now I can finally go back and fix photos that were previously unfixable.
And you do that. So
when I say
never finished on editing,
when I say fix, I'm talking about noise. I'm talking about ISO noise, right? So artifacts from ISO. I'm not changing the car. I'm not changing the color. I'm not changing the sky. I'm not adding things. What I am doing is fixing the fact that technology wasn't able to handle this back then, if that makes sense.
Even though you talk about the technology with so much passion as well because of how far it's come during your journey.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at a picture of something like this where I'm shooting brake rotors, right? In order to achieve this sort of shot, it has to be dark. And in order to achieve a shot like this, I have to bump up the ISO so much, right? But then in turn, back then, when you had to bump up the ISO, that also means it had so much noise. And so what I'm doing now, I'm finding that I want to go back and fix the photos that I was never able to publish, or fix the photos that I always thought were good and I could publish it small, but I couldn't blow it up because there was a lot of problems with it. It was just not perfect. Yeah.
See, the original question was if we could pinpoint some pictures that show maybe something that is an amazing photo for you, but someone's worst moment, especially maybe in that time. And even that page that I've held on now shows one of those moments. I fold over and this page here
of Ken Block going through this wall. This is a fake wall. They built this for Gymkhana 4. This is the set of Universal Studios. But let me see if I can find it. But the whole point is, I don't know what the point was. What were we talking about?
The whole point is it could be someone's worst moment.
Yeah.
There is a man on fire. Hang on.
I've got. I love your reaction to this. You know, one thing that you haven't done is you haven't scrolled through, or you haven't flipped the pages yourself, and it makes me so happy to see people look at this book, because we haven't had physical copies of this for very long, maybe 2 weeks, because the publisher hand bound this for us so we can show it to people and, you know, get it in front of the camera.
A bit like when you show other people their pictures and they're excited to have them.
Yeah, exactly.
This was the same moment for you.
So when we had a chance to see these for the first time, there was so many different reactions, right? If I showed the drivers, they would point themselves out. They're like, "Oh, I remember this. I remember it was crazy," you know. And I show people that put on the events, or I show personalities. It's all a different reaction, and it's so interesting because what this has become is a yearbook, like a yearbook. You know, when you're in high school, you get a yearbook and it's all your friends or whatever. This has become a yearbook for car culture in our generation for the past 20 years. The people that I encounter, these are the trendsetters. These are the wave makers. These are the people that are doing something significant for me to want to tell their story. Here's the picture that I was talking about. It's so small, but it means so much.
Why?
This is the moment my friend Justin Pollock is there with his hands on his face, just so upset because he knows he messed up and he lost the championship. The Formula Drift Championship, he lost it because of his one small mistake. One entire year's worth of work. Just, I wouldn't say thrown away, but it just slipped through his fingers. Literally slipped through his fingers because he's the one behind the wheel. He's the one in the cockpit controlling this car. And after I published this photo way back when, in 2011, he told me, I look at that picture all the time and I think, I don't want to get to this point again. You know, this is what motivates me to be better, to be a better driver.
So that could be one of the most valuable pictures that's ever been taken for him.
I don't know. It's crazy because this is not a technically good picture at all. It's dark. You can barely tell what's happening. But when I originally published it online, and it was like such a significant moment, it was a storytelling moment. It made a lot of sense to a lot of people, if that makes sense. It's like, this is literally the moment you lost the championship. People go their entire lives now that drifting has become like a pretty well-established motorsport. It's what they dream for. It's what they aspire to do. You know, it's what they put their heart and soul into, like what I've put my heart and soul into. These individuals, these gladiators, really put everything on the line to become Formula Drift champions or Drift Masters or whatever series, you know? So this is something in their worst moment. Really, this Justin Pollock, I feel so, at the time I was like, I have to take this picture, but I feel terrible for him. But I'm going to tell the story and I'm going to document this moment because that's what I'm here for.
This represents exactly what you just said, is a moment that Justin is so horrific at the time, but ends up being something so valuable to them. If someone had a camera, maybe they did, but the moment for you that was closest to that, a head in your hands moment throughout your journey, a moment that you think is so horrific at the time and is tough to come back from, what would that have been for you?
I feel like I've had a lot of those moments. I've getting to this journey I've made a lot of mistakes. I have. And you know, that's part of it. That's part of learning. I mean, I can talk about, I think one of them is in here if you want to see. I've had a lot of crazy moments, but there's this one that I even talk about here in this book. Oh, I scroll to it right away. So this page is fun because this story is talking about the time I spent a night in Chinese jail. So this photo in particular is the last photo that I got before this entire mob chased after me and smashed my camera. Yeah. But I talk about the story in here.
What?
Yeah. So at the time I was going to China, I was going to all over the world. I was traveling all over the world to photograph drifting, photographing car culture. So this driver, who is scratching his head, was upset that the judging didn't go his way, right? As you know, in drifting, it's a subjective sport, right? But in the judge's eyes, he didn't win. He didn't do well. So, but he got fourth place. If you notice, there's no fourth place stand, right? But he just happens to be, he just like butted his way into this picture. And he was just upset. He was just so upset that he lost that him and his whole crew just started a riot and pushed this backdrop over and started flipping things over and caused havoc with the officials. Yeah. And then so guess what I did? I just started photographing it. You know, I just did what I always do. I took pictures. And then, you know, you could kind of tell what's going on here. Guy has his hands on my camera or my lens. This guy's getting upset at security, this, whatever. And then the driver finally says, give me that camera. Because he sees me getting evidence of them doing this thing. And he says, give me my camera. And then I say, come get it. And I like signal him to come get it. And then him and all of his entire crew came to get it. And then, which by the way, there's video of this, but that's part of the story. And I start running as fast as I could away from them. And then it just turns into this huge dog pile of people just grabbing for my camera, punching me punching them. I honestly can say I got some good hits in, okay? Honestly, I didn't take any hits to the face. I did take some hits, but I gave some was too. And I'm not kidding you. I didn't say this in the story, but I'm not kidding you. I purposely went for some individuals' crotches. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Like it's the world versus me, you know?
And eventually I was pulled away by the cops and spent some of my night in a Chinese jail.
Exactly. So as this was going on, I was there with Americans, right? The American drift team. They were in the stands watching because if you were eliminated or if you were part of a team or whatever, you're just in the stands watching. Like two of the Americans got second and third, right? I think that's probably one of the reasons why he was so upset, because he was beat by, one of the American drifters that came to his home turf. So as this was happening, all the Americans started jumping down from the stands, like a big distance. Like I'm talking about like 3 meters, 4 meters jumping down. Like they're doing like a human rope, like lowering themselves down to basically join the fight, join the riot. And they all picked up wrenches or they had tools. And it was just like this crazy scene. It was insane. And I was the center of it with this driver. And so the police pulled me away and they put me and the driver in jail for the night. And the organizers of the event came and bailed us out.
And all of that story is captured in these moments. Do you think that one of the keys to your success, because we're talking about so many individual stories because the photos are triggering those inspiring thoughts like, how did that happen? How did that happen? But do you think that one of your keys to the success of your story is the fact that you clicked the shoot button when maybe others wouldn't?
Let me tell you, I had this moment during this melee, during this fight, when if you could imagine holding on to something with your life, imagine holding on to, at the time I had a 1D Mark IIN Canon, right? With a 17-40 lens on it, which is this, I still have that lens today. Imagine holding on to this camera for your dear life and a mob of people are pulling it out of your hands and there's literally nothing you can do to hold on to it. And the camera's gone. Like that moment was I wasn't really thinking like, oh, they took my camera. I was thinking I lost these pictures forever. And then because the Americans were coming down from the stands, like God bless them. I love them so much with their wrenches in hand and metal pipes or whatever they had. They joined the fight too, and they were able to get the camera back. It was smashed already. They like smashed it on the ground. They were able to get the camera back.
Get the SD.
And then there was this moment where I didn't talk about this in the story, but there was this moment where they handed the camera back to me because like it was to a point where they were helping enough, where it was like a good fight. They handed it back to me and I literally handed it back to the person and I went back to fighting. Yeah.
Not quite that introverted self.
Well,
that you described
to do
in
what
your earliest years of photography.
Yeah, at the time, I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover, right? This was probably the biggest fight I've ever been in. And I'm just glad I had something to show for it. In the end, this driver had to buy me a new camera. I think at the time it was so expensive too. It was like $6,000 back in 2007.
But to get onto the monetary side of things, if I was to flick through this book, and as you said, you've done it the opposite way round, you had a phrase for that. What was it called? When it's
backwards chronological.
Chronological backwards. Yeah. So we started with like the McLaren photo, which was back.
Well, no, the first pages, let's see. Ken flicking me off. There's a lot of that. Like the first pages here. Let's see. like my first ever, like for example, like these with a point and shoot camera from behind the fence. And even this was my first time ever seeing a Nissan Skyline. And these photos are so bad. And they're just so like shaky, out of focus. And like,
isn't it amazing when it's
super out of focus?
Like you said, isn't up to scratch in terms of the paint or the build or whatever. Because it makes such a difference when you see that. But it's only when it's been explained that you know to look.
But I look at this and I think to myself, like, I was so in awe of what I was seeing. Something that I only saw in video games and also in magazines and VHS was in front of me for the first time, and I freaked out.
And now look.
And now I'm very, very lucky to have one.
But that, and not just one that literally was sat at the Quail. Because it's perfect. I've been underneath that car. It is.
I literally have a lot of pinch me, I must be dreaming moments, and that was one of them. So the story of that one, I bought it in Japan and I enjoyed it as my car in Japan, unrestored, for 2 years. I drove all around Japan with my family, and I put about 10,000 kilometers on it, and it was just my daily driver. Once it came to age, once it turned 25 years old, it was legal to import to the US. I was thinking, okay, that's going to come around the corner. I need to pull the trigger on a restoration. If I want it to be restored right, it needs to be done in Japan. So I took it to Garage Yoshida, who does the ones for Built by Legends. They build the mines, demo cars. I told myself I need to do this, and I need to do it properly, and I need to document it. And that's what I did. And we're talking about a car that was left outside for 25 years. It was well taken care of still. The interior was very clean, but it wasn't Bayside Blue. It was Fade-side Blue. And it was very faded, and it was mechanically sound, but it was pretty ugly, especially when I parked it next to something that was a lot more well taken care of. Maybe it was, if I parked next to a car that was garaged, you can tell right away. It was like a light blue. So then I thought to myself, I got to get it restored, got to get it done right. And we uncovered quite a bit of rust. And I showed all of that stuff on camera. But now it's all new shock towers, all new, pretty much everything. The only thing that we left alone was the subframe, and that's something that we'll restore here in the US. But the engine is basically turned back to 0 miles, 0 kilometers. And it's just stock horsepower, 330 horsepower, dyno verified. And it's just something that I enjoy. And I drove it from Los Angeles to Monterey and displayed it at the Quail. Dirty brakes and everything, completely filthy after driving maybe 800 miles. And now at the tail end of this, I've put 1,200 miles on it in just a week span. So now I'm actively unrestoring it.
But if you could tell the person who had their line removed from their school photo with a quote on it by the teacher, that you got that car, if you could tell that kid that, what would have his reaction have been back then? One of disbelief.
It's just not a car. It's not just a car. It's something that is a symbol, and it's significant, and it's like a milestone in my life. I think that's what it is. It's something that was so far, it could not be as far. It might as well be saying, like, you could go to the moon or you can go to Mars, whatever. Maybe one day that'll happen in somebody's lifetime, but it might as well have been that for me, because we're talking about a car that was never meant for US shores, and so many other factors, right? Everything. I just never thought, I was just thinking to myself, I just never thought I would get to that point. I never, ever. So, yeah.
How does one learn to charge the correct amount of money to capture a very special moment, to allow themselves to put themselves in the position of owning these cars and living the passion that you capture through your lens?
So that's a great question. And that's something that people ask me almost every day. Especially photographers. They're like, I don't know how much to charge. It really comes down to what your time is worth.
Supply and demand.
Yeah. It just, that's really it.
365 days in a year, 300,000 photos you can take.
So for me, it's about time, but it's also about the story now, right? So I'm lucky in that I get to choose the stories that I want to tell. And honestly, so much of what I do now is still for the passion, and I come out of pocket to make sure it exists. I keep mentioning Goodwood, but that's a really good example of one where I wanted to photograph this year. I wanted to see what it was like, see the atmosphere, see how it's evolved. Because the last time I was there was in 2017.
It was a special year.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, okay, I got to go this year. I'm going to pay my own way and see what happens and tell stories and get the best imagery I physically can get and just show the world what this place is like and what it's like to be there. And so with events like that, I put in the time, I put in the effort, I put in the money to make sure it exists. Who knows if I'll come out positive in the end? Who knows? I might come out negative. I don't really care. The point is that I was able to do it. And at the end of the day, I was so proud of the pictures I was able to make.
What percentage of photos in this book are from paid work?
Now I think that's a really good question. If I had to take a really educated guess, I would say probably 80%.
Wow, that's actually higher than I was anticipating.
Well, and that's a really slippery slope when it comes to paid work, right? Because what does that actually mean, right? Is it something where my expenses were getting paid, or if I was paid to go somewhere, but I spent an extra day or my afternoon to shoot something? That's when it gets crazy, right? So because I have such limited time, I always make the most of my time. Always. Always. When I was in the UK, I was so happy to be able to visit ProDrive. Always loved ProDrive. Always loved what they do.
So do I.
Incredible craftsmen.
And they're right on, for anyone from the UK that's driving and listens to this podcast on the road, they're right on the side of the M40, I want to say. No, it's not the M40. It's not, I forget the name of the motorway every single time, but you literally drive down it and it's on the left and you go past ProDrive and that building. And everyone that knows exactly where that is peers over to see what is outside. It's next to an aerospace company.
Yes. So it's one of those things where I've driven by it a couple times now, and every time I thought to myself, I know what's in there. I need to go in there. And this year I was able to make it happen. And I just have to make the most of my time. You know, I just had that afternoon blocked off for that. And no matter where I am in the world, for example, going to Brunei, guess what? I have to stop by in Singapore. That's the only way to get there, right? Which means I'll be on the ground for this amount of time. Maybe I'll visit a shop in Singapore. Maybe I'll end up with some crazy supercar story where guy dug out the basement of his place, and you never know. And that's the beauty of car culture. It's endless. I can shoot for the rest of my days. Every weekend I can try, but there's endless amount of stories to tell. And there's also the beauty of it, and you agree with me, there's an endless amount of people to listen and watch and enjoy. We can't make content fast enough. We just can't. There's not enough time. You know, that's the theme of this podcast, is time.
If you were to take your top 10 photos from the book that you're the most proud of, if you had to pick 10, and they'd be 10 different ones every time.
Yeah.
But do you think they would be more from your paid work or more from times like Goodwood, where you went to something for the passion?
I think, unfortunately, one doesn't come without the other. You have to be able to pay for it somehow. You have to be able to afford it somehow. I have to be able to be there at the right time, the right place. Like, let's talk about the back page, right? This is a moment that I will cherish and something that I'm super proud of. It's just this great just moment in time in car culture. So this is Rally de Catalunya, right? The Spanish rally. And Ken Block was competing in WRC in his Fiesta, okay? This stage called for every single rally car, including, whoever. I think Sebastien. I think Loeb was still driving around this time. I don't know. But every single competitor had to come in, do a donut around this roundabout, and continue on. Okay, that was what the stage called for, an actual donut. Guess what Ken did? He did an extra donut. He did the donut and didn't go. He kept going, and then that's when smoke started pouring in because, the tires were really getting heated up. And then that's when everybody started noticing that, oh my God, Ken is doing an extra donut. That's what Ken is known for, doing donuts. So then this moment in time, like, he did it for these people, nobody else. What does it matter to him? He's done thousands and thousands of donuts in his life. He's enjoying himself. What's one extra donut? But to these people that waited here all day for this moment. And when I say all day, I'll tell you another story about this picture that is very interesting. This meant so much to them and to me because he did it for them. And when I say all day, I literally mean all day because we have me and Ken's personal photographer, Ron Zaris. We have a special nickname for this mountain. We call it Poo Mountain. And the reason why is because there's no toilets here. And literally, there is human feces all over this mountain. I'm not kidding. There's nowhere to go to the bathroom. And they have to stay here and they have to endure this just to watch this happen.
I'm gobsmacked.
It's insane.
Because that's the true automotive fans. I've grown up in such a privileged position, and people think it's privileged maybe to have the box tickets or the moments that have the best view, typically the best view. But do you think the magic is in the places that the others aren't standing?
It's so interesting to me because I think this is probably why
even is crap.
Yeah. This literally little crap. This is why I feel like WRC and stage rally is not big in America, because it's not the cushy go to a football, baseball stadium. You have your amenities. These people are suffering to enjoy cars and car culture. I suffered to enjoy this moment,
Did you suffer when you heard about Ken's passing?
Oh, it's probably one of the worst days of my life. I was in Japan actually driving this car, and he was going to meet with us in 2 days. I was there for Tokyo Auto Salon, and he had a signing session at Toyo Tires at Tokyo Auto Salon, and it was before that. He was boarding. He was getting on a flight in 2 days to go to Tokyo from that point, and it was terrible. It was horrible. I mean, luckily I was with my family, and a lot of people close to him called me right away when it happened. Like, I was very early on in terms of like finding out this tragedy. It's crazy because nobody's going to replace him, Like, it's just...
You get
impossible.
these people, that word, that there's always a word as well as the one that I try and get people to pick, that throughout an episode or a conversation, people keep coming back to, and that word is talent with you. You said it so many times. I don't think there's a better word to summarize Ken, because he was so full of talent.
I talk about him a lot in this book. You know, I talk about early on meeting with him, working with him, and then him giving me a break and giving me the recognition. I pushed hard, beyond hard. Like, I'm talking about beyond my physical limit and probably bad for my health limit for few people in this world, and he was one of them. It's fair to say that it was always the most for him, because of what he demanded from everybody surrounding him. But also from that came greatness. You know, I'm talking about sacrificing sleep. I'm talking about sacrificing my body.
There was moments where you hated him.
It's when I say, people always, when they're watching my YouTube videos or seeing my Instagram, when I complain about the suffering, they call me out and they're like, "Oh, come on, Larry, it's not that bad. You can deal with this," or whatever. I'm talking about full on fevers for being sick, but still being out here. Obviously, that's a little looked down upon now. You know, I would reconsider what I'm doing now. But back then it was, you know, if I was up all night with food poisoning, doesn't matter. Still needed to be there on time for this moment, or else, you know, it could be extreme cold, extreme heat, extreme this, it could be whatever. Come hell or high water, these pictures need to exist. And that's what we did for Ken.
Would he take an active role with you in saying, "I'm going to do this, you need to be up there"?
Sometimes. Ron and I knew that he was going to do this. Nobody else knew. Ron and I knew he was going to do this, but we didn't actually know. I think there was some conversation about if he was within striking distance of winning the stage, he was going to scrap it. I think there was some kind of conversation like that, right? And there's always a real chance for him to do well and win, because he was such a wheelman. But of course, he's also the showman. And when we saw, okay, times, all right, maybe he's like third on stage or fourth on stage, we're like, okay, he's going to do the donuts. Yeah, there's always stuff like that. And it's always his vision, Brian Scotto, you know, the director's vision of what the perfect picture could potentially be. And they'll let me know, but I always have my own take. And the fun thing that I've talked about a lot is that the Easter egg when you're watching the Gymkhana films is to find me in the films, because I may not be where the camera is. I find my own angle to what I interpret is the best angle. So that unfortunately means that I'm in the shot a lot.
It's like, "Where's Larry?"
Yeah. So I can pretty much point myself out in most of the films, but a lot of times they've spent quite a bit of money. I'm so sorry, Brian, for essentially photoshopping me out of the scene.
As we kind of come to the closing stages of this, because I genuinely can imagine being here with tea in the morning, coffee in the afternoon, and beer in the evening, with a camera above, talking about stories from every single page of this book. Yeah. And I would do it because it's bringing to life moments. I don't think there's anything better than picturing what someone is telling you. I'd say the only other person, even on this trip, that has explained a story so well that I've been able to picture the moment visually from a still was Jason Camisa. He was brilliant at telling the story of one of his crashes off a cliff, but this is just utterly fabulous. And if someone wants to get one of these copies, how do they do it?
So I'm glad you asked. Right now, it's available for sale. I think by the time you guys see this, it'll be widely available. It's on Amazon. And we also ship worldwide on carrarabooks.com. I think it's carrarabooks.com.
And we'll leave the links, but the links will be in the description below to be able to purchase this. And when I say, guys, and this isn't even a sales pitch,
carrarabooks.com.
if you sit with a drink or a beer and go through these pictures and don't just flick and you look at the detail, it will absolutely blow your mind. And it will make you realize what talent and passion has gone into every single one of the photos.
Yeah, so it legitimately took 21 years to build this book, to make this book. And it's on sale for $125 on Amazon and also carrarabooks.com. And, you know, I hope you guys, if you love cars and car culture, if you grab one of these, you know, I think you'll enjoy it. And use it as a yearbook. If you're an active person in car culture right now, and if you have this with you, get the drivers to sign it, you know? Get Sebastien Loeb to sign it. Get whomever, Romain Dumas,
Vin,
Von
Magnus.
Jr. Yeah.
And
Magnus.
you know what? Tomorrow morning, I have Magnus once again sitting in this van, and I will get him on camera to sign the copy of this book.
Have him sign the afterword that he wrote.
But it brings me to a close about competition and competitiveness, because there'll be so many introverted kids with cameras listening to this who you are their hero. And they've listened to how you physically fought, something you probably never thought you'd do at the time of being very quiet in school, and how you've pushed yourself to the limit to achieve the things that you've done. You've also learned how to charge, you've learned how to earn, you've learned how to bring things into your world that could have only been a dream, and certainly more than a dream to the people around you, with teachers when you were younger. Would you ever happily call yourself the greatest automotive photographer of all time?
No. I mean, I know people say that, but I don't think so. I don't think it's fair to automotive photography.
Do you think that's what I was going to say. Is that a fair thing to say, or is there photos that capture it? And how would you even judge it? It's a little bit like the competitions and what makes that individual in the book so angry in that moment, because how do you judge it?
It's just tough. I mean, there's just no way to say that. You know, it's like saying it's the best pizza in the world.
But do you think if you were to ask all the people that were present during the making of the Gymkhana series to look at 1,000 pictures and choose 100 of them that were the ones that were just incredible to them, do you think your name would come up more often than others?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that does come down to what I mentioned earlier, is having the opportunity, is having the chance. I just need more chances. And that could mean remote cameras, that could mean moving around more, that could mean having the best equipment, like equipment advantage. It could be so many things. I'm very realistic, right? I know where I'm at in, again, like I mentioned, the hierarchy of photography. I see things that inspire me every day, and that actually makes me so happy, because there's so many incredible projects related to cars and car culture happening every single day. It's almost impossible to keep track of all of them. And the more of them that come out, the more that inspire me, the more that I see, the happier I get, because I realize that it's not just me. It's so many other people like me pursuing this goal, pushing this hard for this craft, for this thing that we love. It's the biggest it's ever been, period. I mean, that's thanks to F1, thanks to NASCAR, thanks to Cars and Coffee, Caffeine and Machine, or whatever, you know. It's everything. It's all of us as this living, breathing thing, enjoying this thing together. For me, the best photographer thing in the world. It's just, yeah, it doesn't matter. And it's also impossible.
Larry Chen, thank you for joining me on Road to Success. I appreciate it.
Thank you.